Hello, my name is Kelly Swartz. I'm a partner at Wiederman Malik Law Firm and currently serve as chair of the weVENTURE Board of Advisors. Wiederman Malik has invested in weVENTURE because we see firsthand the unique challenges and opportunities our female clients face. As an attorney who specializes in intellectual property, I can absolutely verify what Liz Sarah just shared with you. Women remain an obscenely low percentage of the patents filed every year. Trust me when I say this is not because women don't have great ideas. We do. But unfortunately, many women struggle to recognize the value in their unique endeavor. Our next speaker, Sandra Spielberg, is going to share her story of entrepreneurship, and I hope she will inspire you to pursue success in your own unique way.
Welcome everyone to my talk. I am Sandra Spielberg. I am the founder of Seeker Health and the founder of Nexi and the author of this book, New Startup Mindset, which is based on my starting, building, and then exiting my first company, Seeker Health. Today, I want to tell you a little bit about the startup story and a few of the myths that I discovered along the way in startup land, as well as how to break free of these myths so that you can relentlessly pursue your own success. And so let's start at the beginning. What is a startup? A startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And so extreme uncertainty is really the key there, right? We're building something and we're not really sure exactly how it fits this market, if the market will uptake it, what will happen to it. But in essence, we're all working under conditions of extreme uncertainty, especially now during this pandemic. And so as I started my company back in 2015, I noticed that there was a bit of a formula. The formula, especially here in Silicon Valley, was that you had to be male, Caucasian, Asian, or Indian, generally be a group of programmers who are young. They're going to say yes to a co-founder. They're going to say yes to venture funding. And they're going to need a unicorn, a company valued at $1 billion or more, to call this whole thing a success. And so as I was building my company, I realized that I wasn't following this formula. I didn't take any outside funding. I didn't hire a very expensive team. And I used the revenue that was generated from my company, from my early customers, to pay for the development of the software that ended up building a more scalable company. I ran a profitable company from year one, and I focused exclusively on acquiring customers and improving the ways in which we serve them. Let me back up for a minute and tell you a little bit about the company that I built. So Seeker Health is a patient-finding platform. The company finds patients, especially for clinical trials and other needs that a biopharmaceutical company may have. As I started this company, I started with what I call a minimum viable service. Facebook and Google campaigns that I can place in a compliant way to help clinical trials reach the potential patients that may want to participate in that clinical trial. However, as I was building this company, I realized that I wasn't really following this formula, and that part of not following the formula was actually helping me create a more impactful and valuable company. In addition, I'm not the formula. I am an immigrant from Latin America. I'm a woman. I'm not a programmer. I started this company at 39 years old. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 2 school-age kids, and I need 8 hours of sleep each day. And so despite not following the formula and not being the formula, my company still went up and to the right. The number of customers increased, revenue increased, and profit increased. And then in 2018, 3 years into it, after bootstrapping this company and working with customers who provided revenue and got a service and a product out of it and continued to build that product, then I received 3 offers to acquire my startup. And those offers, in essence, came because I was running a profitable company. It's always easier for an acquirer to acquire a company that is profitable because that acquisition is then accretive. It will increase the profit of the acquiring company. And so looking back, I realized that not having followed the formula, which basically says get venture capital, spend it, get venture capital, spend it, right? Instead of doing that, creating this profitable company really helped me derive the most value out of it. And so I decided to write a book about it. And in this book, I reflect on some of the myths that get in the way of creating a company, right? And so tying it to this theme of this conference, right? This is the relentless pursuit of truth. So let's start with that. Let's start with the myths. What gets in the way of you creating this company, right? So here are some of the myths that get in the way. Myth number one, unicorn or nothing. So this is the myth that unless you are creating a company like a Facebook or a Google, something with a 1 billion valuation or larger, then you and your company are nothing. And the truth is that nothing could be further from the truth, right? Right under unicorns, you have all sorts of valuable, real, and well-fed animals like giraffes and lions and gazelles. And so just because you may not be working to create a unicorn, it doesn't mean that what you're creating doesn't have impact or value. And this is really important for first-time founders. Building a unicorn, a company of 1 billion valuation, is generally an outlier, right? That's what we call an outlier return, right? And so setting the task to be so large becomes really discouraging. Instead, set the task to say, I'm not going to build a unicorn my first time around. This is my first time around, right? I'm going to instead build a lion. And then we are chopping up the task into something that is more accomplishable, more real. The next myth, you need a co-founder. So many times, especially here in Silicon Valley, there's this myth that companies always must have a co-founder. And it's very interesting because I've come across research from the University of Pennsylvania of a large cohort of founders and companies in which it notes that having a co-founder actually reduces the odds of success. And the companies that had a solo founder outperformed those that had a co-founder based on revenue and profit and longevity. And that makes sense to me because, you know, running a startup requires very quick decision making. And when you have this monster with two heads, it is obviously more difficult to make decisions than when you have one person that is leading the company. The next myth is that you need venture capital. And venture capital is one of the ways to fund a company. It is not the way that I funded my company. I funded my company through early paying customers. And I love early paying customers because they're not only buying your product or service, but at the same time, they're giving you a lot of feedback and they're pointing you to where there are additional needs in the market. Venture capital is difficult to obtain. Some of the stories that I heard from founders, male founders, white male founders, is 70 meetings to get 2 venture capitalists to fund their companies. To me, that doesn't seem like a really good use of time. And I'd rather be proposing to 70 potential customers that are going to pay, where my odds of getting a payment are likely to be better. And then the final myth I want to cover is that you need to be a young white man to be successful as a startup founder. And this is also absolutely not true. There's great research from Harvard Business Review that notes that the average age of successful founders is 45. I personally haven't even gotten there. Well, I'll get there next year. But the point of the matter is that if you don't see yourself in the pictures or in the images that you see in the media when they depict startup founders, then this is of no consequence to your journey. There's really only one of you, and what you can create is important. So go and create it regardless of what these labels are that we provide to each other. And so next, I want to share with you a couple of the lessons that I learned in my journey of creating the company and relentlessly pursuing success for my company and for myself. So the first lesson is to adopt a beginner's mindset. And that means that as you go on to create this company, you are perfectly okay with the fact that you are a beginner at your startup and that you've never done these things before. So let me take you back. When I started my company, I had 15 years of experience in the biopharmaceutical industry. So I brought that to my company for sure. But I had never started a company, had never incorporated one, never filed a patent for anything, never hired every single team member on my team. And so now I was set to have to do all of these things. And as I did them, I realized that there was this sort of voice inside of me saying, oh my goodness, you don't know how to do these things. And addressing that voice from the point of view of, wait, look, I am a beginner at this, so give me a chance to do it, really helped turn that around. So being a beginner is actually perfectly okay in your startup, and adopting this mindset of, look, I'm just a beginner at this, and that's okay. I won't be a beginner for much longer, but I'll have this opportunity to try this task that I need to do and then do it to the best of my ability. And also, a beginner is very good about getting help from others, because a beginner knows what he or she doesn't know. Great, so that's the beginner's mindset. The second important lesson that I learned during the startup journey is all about focus. And I like to call this single deep focus. This is the ideal. This is what we want to attain during periods of time every day while we are building something important. And so a period of single deep focus, I like to define it as follows. If the thing that you most desired appeared on your peripheral vision during a period of single deep focus, you wouldn't even see it. Okay, that's how focused you are on the task at hand. And of course, we can't maintain this level of focus 8 hours a day, but we can definitely create a container that allows us to create and foster that type of focus for a couple of hours a day, right? And so in the book, I go into quite a bit of depth as to how to create this container, how every day to show up to your startup with a couple of tasks that need and can benefit from the single deep focus. So single deep focus is one you want to use to create all the vital organs of your startup, right? The things that really matter, whether that is your product or your service, maybe it's a patent filing, maybe this is looking through resumes for the next layer of management, or this is creating a slide deck that you're going to present to customers. These are the things that matter, and they require single deep focus. And so I talk a little bit more about how to cultivate that and how to create these containers where for an hour and a half or 2 hours, you will be devoted and focused to this specific task and have minimized all opportunities for disruptions. The third lesson that I learned is that closed doors show you the way. So one of the things about startups is that they're difficult by design. We're creating something new that didn't exist, or we are working to bring a product or service to a new part of the market. So by design, we need to be able to expect difficulties, right? So expecting difficulties was one of the most important lessons for me. Towards the beginning of the journey, every time something would go wrong for my startup, I would sort of get off balance and be like, why is this happening? And, interrogate it maybe a little bit too much. And then I came to find out that that was the path. The path is the obstacle, right? And so there are going to be obstacles in your startup. There are going to be closed doors. And it's very important to not get off balance when these happen, but to really face them, right? So in the book, I make a really good distinction between what an obstacle and a closed door is. An obstacle is kind of like your run-of-the-mill difficulty that will happen in your startup. It will happen in your life. And in general, it's calling for you to become better at something. And once you do, the obstacle resolves and your startup actually is better. An example of that is early on for Secret Health, we had to submit a campaign for review, and then this campaign was rejected. Obstacle, right? And as it was rejected, the rejecting organization said, well, what we need from you is we need you to document all of the compliance matters and how you've handled them. I said, well, no problem. So I went into a single period of deep focus, wrote this white paper, and every time since then that we submitted a campaign, we submitted it with this additional paper, right? This additional white paper. The obstacle is resolved. Our company is now better, right? The other type of difficulty is called a closed door. And a closed door feels more like a tectonic shift might be required for the company to overcome this. So maybe the market's just not ready to move in that direction, or maybe there are way too many red flags coming up. And so those closed doors are also important. The role of the founder isn't necessarily to beat her head against this closed door, but instead to take a step and shift in another direction so that we can go where things are flowing. So all in all, the lesson that I learned is to expect difficulties. That is just the name of the game in startup land. So in order to close this talk, what I'd love to encourage you to do is to see what the formulas are out there and see if they're working for you. Look, if there's a formula out there and it works for you, then go for it. But if that formula doesn't work for you, or if you don't see yourself in that formula, then that should be of no consequence to your journey. And you continue, you plow on, you continue this relentless pursuit of success, and you build a company on your own terms. Thank you for your time.